WDXE.
Hey, that's us, WDXE. It's time for the Friends and Neighbors Hour. And my friend and neighbor today is Mr. Bobby Evers. Bobby, how are you, buddy?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Thank you for coming in and being with me this morning. I'm going to check and make sure we're on like we're supposed to be on. But thank you so much for agreeing to come in. You and I have been talking about doing this for a while.
Well, yeah, you've been threatening me for a long time, so I felt
wasn't
like
a threat.
I kind of had to come. So,
Yeah.
but I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, of course, Evers is not an unfamiliar name in Lawrenceburg,
I hope
Lawrence
not.
County, and the surrounding areas. Really, Evers Construction Company, of course, was I guess started by your dad, right?
Yeah,
Mr. Mickey Evers.
He started it the year he got out of the military
Oh,
in
okay.
1955.
1955, and it's pretty close to where it was originally.
Yeah, it's across the street. Well, I think there was one other short-term location, maybe over on 4th Street or something, but he was across the street where the chiropractor's office is for I don't know, 7 or 8 years, but I think I was around 7 or 8 years old when we moved to the current location that we're at
It's
now.
been there pretty
Yeah.
much most of my memory, right where it
Yeah.
is today. And of course, I had the privilege of knowing Mickey, your dad, and was a buddy with him, and I think he was in the Kiwanis Club with me.
Oh, he was in the Kiwanis Club for 40 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And part of the K Notes.
Yes.
That was a big deal.
One of the original members of the K-Notes.
yeah.
I have many stories about that.
I know you do. I know you do. Well, I've looked forward to having you here, and of course, you are now an accomplished author.
Well, I'm an author.
Well, you've published 2 books already.
3.
3 books. I'm behind.
Yes, you are.
Now, what was the first book?
Shoes and Cheese.
Shoes and I remember it.
Yeah.
And
Death and Ham.
okay,
Was the second one.
Now I remember seeing that, but I'm not aware of the third one.
Airmail and Chocolate Pie.
Okay. Well, unique titles.
Yes.
We'll get to all that. We'll
Yeah.
get to all that. But I kind of wanted to, part of what we've done here with Friends and Neighbors Hours is get to know people a little better in their family history, their connections to Lawrenceburg and Lawrence County, that kind of thing. And of course, your dad was very well known in a lot of circles in the community, and I knew your mom. But can you tell me some of your family history background? Maybe your mom's history. Was she a native Lawrence County too?
Well, my mother was Helen Rimke,
Yeah.
and her Andy Rimke and Alma Rimke were her parents, and they had moved to Henryville, Tennessee, the large bustling community, when my mother was in high school, I believe. But my mother grew up on the property where the old drive-in movie theater was.
Oh, really? Okay.
I believe that was their original farm that they had. And then her parents moved to Henryville, and then she moved into town, and so she worked at First National Bank, the one where the Reserve is now, and she worked there until she met while she met my dad, she worked there.
Okay.
And then this is the story, and it fits right here because the story about that's Airmail and Chocolate Pie, that's one of the stories in the new book, is about the letters that were returned to us from one of the Needigasses that bought the Evers family farm, which was out across from where Body Works is, out on the Pulaski Highway.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the old Evers family farm where my dad was living. And after his brother Vincent died, they bought the farm, the Needigasses, and they had it for a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
And one day they called my nephew Clint and told him they had a duffel bag of my dad's. And it from when he was in the military from 1951 through 1955.
Okay.
And it had every letter he had received while he was in the military in the bag. And they returned it to us, and we put all the letters in order, and it was all the correspondence with my mother and while they were dating.
Wow, how
And
neat.
yeah, it was, and it inspired me to write a story for the new book and the title for the new book. And because they were all airmail, because he was in Germany during the Korean War, he was stationed in Germany.
Yeah.
And so, in one of the letters, he said, when I get out of the military, could we get married in 1955? And so he was there from 51 to 55, and that was a big year in his life because he got out of the military. He opened the business. and he got married in 1955.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that was a big year.
Yeah.
It was a big year. And so both your parents kind of grew up here in Lawrence County then?
Yes. They're both originally from Lawrence County. Both from Catholic families, and they got married at the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome deal. Well, there are tons of stories. I know Mickey started a business there, and a thriving business still to this day. And it was started in 50. When was this?
It was Evers Tin Shop.
Evers Tin Shop.
That was in 55, and that was the name when he did sheet metal work and roofing, and he did all the work at Murray. Back when Murray was booming, he did all the work, and then in 1977, his the man that was doing all of the construction work at Murray, Mike Needigassess, was going to retire. And since Mickey was doing all of the roofing and all of the heating and air conditioning and all that already, Mike offered my dad his business, and my dad bought him out. And my dad went into the construction business in 1977.
Okay.
And that's kind of when I started in the business.
Okay.
Around that time, I was 14 years old, and I started doing, working after school and things like that. And when I was like 15 or 16, I started doing bookkeeping and payroll and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of us that knew you and your family also knew Mike.
Right.
Mike probably helped in the business as well.
Mike started when he was 14 or so. He started working in the business. He started working service calls with.
Now, are you the oldest, or is Mike?
No, Mike is.
Janice
is the oldest.
Janice, okay.
She lives in Nashville. She was a retired nurse anesthetist.
Okay.
And Mike is deceased. And he was, Janice is 6 years older than I am, and Mike is 4 years older than I am, so I'm much younger.
Much younger.
I'm just 62.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. That's good.
Yeah.
I remember Mike and you guys, you from high school, and Mike was a little older than me, too. Well, you and I are pretty close to the same age.
Yeah.
Pretty close to the same age. So it was a family business then.
Oh, yeah. It's always been.
Yeah.
A family situation.
Yeah,
Dad's brother worked for us for many, many years. He was a mason, and he worked for us. Lewis and Cecilia, his sister, worked in the office for us for a number of years. And so it's always been a lot of family involved.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well,
and we all still speak to one another.
Well, that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and now my two nephews are in the business and basically have taken over the business, and I'm not really as involved anymore, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm still there, but I'm But
you've got
younger people are running things.
You got some good guys at the helm and taking care of business, and the family business can continue. So even to this day, and like a lot of businesses have put that kind of time and years and effort into it, it's grown into something quite much larger than it once was.
Yeah, it started out. Dad started out in the sheet metal business, and I mean, people would buy the Amish would buy their half-round gutters from us, and people would come in and have their wood stoves relined, and we would do duct work and things like that. And then it grew into industrial and commercial duct work and ventilation systems in plants and things like that. And then after he got into the construction business, and I don't think any of this was ever planned, but it was always kind of out of necessity.
Yeah.
There was. We didn't really have an industrial electrical contractor in town, and so we sort of started doing our own and our own industrial and commercial electrical work in the 80s, and also the same thing with the plumbing and mechanical work. We started doing that in the 80s and 90s ourselves because it was often hard to get contractors to come to Lawrenceburg when we needed them,
right?
And it was just a good thing to be involved in. So
I know from just my own just knowing around town that it was known as Evers Tin Shop when I was little, and kind of that name stuck for a long time, but it was so much more than that.
Right. And really, Evers Construction is not a good description because when Dad named it Evers Construction, that was just the construction company. And then we still had the tin shop, but we sort of consolidated all that together at one time. But it's very unusual for a construction company to do their own subcontract type work with the electrical and plumbing and those type things. It's very, very unusual, and we do all of that.
You did HVAC.
Right. We've always done HVAC.
Always done that. And refrigeration too, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. And but mainly heating and air conditioning and ventilation for manufacturing plants.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of work with industries, local industries,
yeah.
commercial buildings of all sorts.
Yeah, we built most of the buildings at Murray, on the Murray property, all the buildings on the Murray property from 77 on. And then we built pretty much all the buildings on the Motivation Drive property, the old Jones buildings, Jones Apparel, Tridon, Dura, all of those buildings. SOS. We built pretty much all of that.
In one of the school building phases, you guys were heavily involved in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we did a lot of work.
We were, yeah,
a lot of work. A lot of work. Well, I was just curious, really, how Mickey learned the trade to start with. What kind of led him into actually doing this kind of, well, at that time, more metal work.
Well, in the military, he was a aircraft mechanic.
Okay.
And, I think he probably, and I'm not sure, you always later after someone's gone, you wish you'd ask a lot more questions, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I believe that he did, some sheet metal work probably in the military when he was trained working on aircraft. And but he was a mechanic, and he was very mechanically inclined. He could fix, pretty much, anything. And if you gave him a big enough hammer, he could fix whatever.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit worried about some of that aircraft, though, knowing how he would take, if he got frustrated with something, he would take a hammer and start working on it. Made me a little bit concerned for the military, but no, he was very, very mechanically inclined and could fix most anything.
Awesome, good. Well, and of course, you guys have employed a lot of folks here over the years.
There have been many, many people through our doors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people started their own. Even went on to start their own business out of Evers.
Oh,
and all
yes.
that kind of stuff. So it's been a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of people that have worked for us and went on to start their own businesses. We've got a lot of people that have been with us, until they retired. And, and I was always, if somebody wanted to do their own thing, I always thought that was great. And, it's also a good feeling when somebody wants to work for you until they retire.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we just had our annual Thanksgiving gathering, and we had a lot of retirees that came back by to see us. It's always great to see them. And but I guess we usually have about 100 employees in that range.
Yeah. Something that I know about you that a lot of people may not know is you have dabbled in a little real estate here and there. If you don't mind me asking you about that, some houses and some remodels and some things like that.
Yes, they call it flipping these days, I guess.
Right.
But I have renovated a number of houses in my career, in my design career as well. I mean, that was, over the years where people would, hire me as a designer, and maybe we would do an addition to their home, or we would, they would build a new home, and I would do the design or something like that. But in the last few years, I've been working on Parks in Caperton, and I have done, I guess, about 8 houses over on, it's mostly on Parks,
Right.
and that's where I live.
Right.
And I love those 2 streets. And
Beautiful streets, yeah.
And Lawrenceburg is not blessed with a lot of pretty older historic neighborhoods. And when I started working over there and buying houses, there were a lot of really of houses in very poor condition.
Right.
And so I started doing that, and fortunately during that time that I've been working over there, a lot of other people have bought houses and redone, and the street's looking a lot better, which I'm really proud of.
Well, you and others like you that have some vision about those older homes and the capability and skill set to do that. That's commendable. I mean, really, it's kind of really lifted that area over there. Because it's always been, like you said, a beautiful street, beautiful area. And you're right, Lawrenceburg does not have, a tremendous amount of historic homes, older homes that way.
No, I wish we had more, and I wish Lawrenceburg had saved more of the older homes that we have had, because there are some beautiful, beautiful homes that have been torn down. But you can't change that.
No.
But I have tried to do what I can in that neighborhood anyway, and I really like living in that neighborhood. It's a very peaceful and really nice people, and people walk and are friendly and all that.
Yeah,
so I really
it's a great
enjoy
area.
it. It's very nice.
And we have a lot of neighborhoods like that in Lawrenceburg. We do. There's
Yeah.
a lot of places in our little neck of the woods here that, for the most part, everybody's friendly. You kind of passed over something in the conversation that I was going to ask you about. Your design work. A lot of people may not know that about you either. You've give me some, not just here, but I happen to know some other larger projects, home projects, things like that you've worked on design-wise and help build in some big ways.
Yeah, I've done a lot of design. I've had the good fortune to work with some really interesting people, and I've worked in Mount Pleasant a lot for Jim Barrier. He is very involved in his community, and he was very instrumental in saving that downtown. And I designed and renovated at least a dozen buildings in downtown Mount Pleasant for him. Like Mount Pleasant Grill building, and I designed that. And there's any number of buildings that we took and that were really in really bad shape, and that we kind of brought back to life. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the businesses during COVID, some of the businesses didn't survive, but they're building back up. And but he has really done a lot as far as trying to save that downtown, and because that's where he has had his business for many years, Smelter Service, and I just designed his new home in Columbia. And that was a multi-year project, and it's a beautiful home that we did to look like an 1850s farmhouse, a stone farmhouse with additions that had been added on over the years. That was the concept I had in my mind for it, and it turned out. Really, it's a beautiful place. I'm very proud of it.
I got to see some pictures that you shared with me once a while back. A beautiful place. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun, and I mean, I did some work in Atlanta for Dan Ugla. Actually, Mike Ugla, his brother, is the one that would hire me to do when Dan would get traded to another ball team. He was traded to the Atlanta Braves, and I had to go do a penthouse for him in Atlanta in about, I think, 3 weeks, and it was a really large penthouse, and that was a lot of fun to get to go to Atlanta and do that. And
you mentioned Dan Ugla. I knew his dad.
Yeah,
and
they're a really nice family.
Nice folks.
Yeah. I've done a lot of work for Mike too. I've done some houses for him. I did 3 houses for Dan, and Mike, his brother, really great guy. I did a house for him and a business office for him, and as well. Mike is spearheading the Columbia Miracle Field,
Oh, yeah.
like we have Abigail's Field here. They're doing a playground and a ballpark at the same time, and
Awesome.
I did the design for that.
Very good.
As well as the Abigail's Field here, I did the design for, which I really am proud of that. I think it turned out well.
Yeah. Well, it's a great part of the community here, a big community effort, and I know you were instrumental in making that happen. Well, sometimes we get phone calls. That people want to ask questions or maybe make a comment, and we'll take a phone call. Good morning. How are you?
Yes, I would be interested in knowing his training to do this. Did he get a degree like in architecture? Is he just naturally creative and he learned on the job? And also later, if he has time, I'm interested in the 3 books. I couldn't write them down fast enough, but I was really interested because of the titles. They're even creative, I think, for what he's writing about.
Yeah, we're going to get to the books, I promise. All right, very good. Yeah. I was about to ask the exact same thing. Really, is how did you develop your interest in this type of work, other than, I guess, coming up through the construction company?
Well, no, really, that didn't have anything to do
It had
with
nothing to do with it.
I started drawing house plans and blueprints when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and I did that. I've done it all my life. I've never had any training, and I always warn my clients about that. I'm not an architect, but like, for instance, on the Barriers home, I did all the original sketches and the concepts for it, and then I had a licensed professional do the actual working plans for the project.
Sure.
But I'm sort of a concept person.
Sure.
I do the concepts and the overall design, and as far as the design work, I've never had any training. It's just something that I've always been able to do, and I sort of have a gift for it.
Awesome, good. Well, you've done a lot of wonderful projects. I know.
Yeah.
I've got to see some of them, and a lot of people see them and they don't know they're seeing your projects.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in Lawrenceburg that I've done that I don't think people know that I've done.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've been quite busy over the last. I actually started doing design really as soon as I came after I graduated from college with a business degree, because I knew I was going to work in the family business, and that seemed like the most efficient thing.
Yeah.
But after I got out of college and I redid my first house, people just started asking me for advice and for help, and probably by the time I was 25, I was already doing several houses a year.
Yeah.
In addition to working at the construction company.
Well, this leads me to this, because you're a busy guy, and you've been a busy guy from the get-go. Mm-hmm. How did you decide and start zeroing in on actually taking time to write?
Well, I'm a big theater fan, and I love theater and the arts, mm-hmm. And I always wanted to write a play, and I had tried to write a play, and I've actually written a couple of plays, but that's something that's very collaborative. You need a lot of people to get involved and to get excited about it and to want to work with you.
Right.
And but I'd also written some shorter stories about some interesting people, let's say,
yes.
that I have encountered in my own hometown and in other places.
Yes.
And during COVID, everybody was kind of down and out and bored and all of that. So, and one of my friends called me that I had shared some of these stories with many years prior,
yeah,
and asked me if I would share some of those with them, and I did, and I sort of started sharing them with other people, and we would gather on my patio, and I started reading some of these stories to friends, and they were laughing. I mean, and we were having a really good time. And I thought they were kind of funny, but I didn't think that, I didn't think there was an audience for it. And I certainly had never planned to write a book or anything like that.
Really?
No, absolutely. I mean, my gosh, I barely made it through English, So my English composition in college professor would be amazed by this. And so I just thought it was so cool that I could make people laugh and that they could, get their mind off of, struggle or worry or whatever. And so I just kept writing and sharing these stories during COVID. And all of a sudden I had a large group of stories that I thought were pretty good. And I called a friend of mine who is a theatrical consultant, and she does editing. And I had worked with her on my play.
Yeah.
And she said she could edit it for me, and she did. And she encouraged me, and several people really, really encouraged me to do a book. And so Shoes and Cheese was the first.
Shoes and Cheese.
Yes. And they're all on Amazon. You can get them on Amazon, or you can get them at Paper and Thread on the Square, or at Lawrenceburg Glass. We haven't talked about Lawrenceburg Glass either.
We haven't. I forgot about it.
Yeah. And they're just stories about a town that some people think is Lawrenceburg, but I can't confirm or deny that. It's called Boontown because I don't want to get in any trouble, but these are true stories about my family and about people that I've encountered over the years. And I don't have the attention span to write a book. I can't write a story that would take you the entire length of a novel or something. So I write in short story form. So every story in the books is a full story, and you can read one and put it down and pick it back up in a month, and you don't have to follow a plot.
Right.
So, but once you get to the end of the book, you've learned a lot about me and my life. And I mean, it's not necessarily biographical, but it's definitely you will get to know me and my friends. And my friends make a lot of appearances, and family members and
right.
all of that. And yeah.
But they're kind of hidden.
Well, the names have been changed to protect me. So, and to protect them.
Yes.
So if you want to deny that you're in my books, I'm
just hoping that I can find a place in the book somewhere, one of the books.
I'm
probably not in there
that they're
yet.
going to be anymore. But I have had a person that was in one of the books. And she was mad that she wasn't in the second book. She was in the first book, and I was worried that she was going to be mad that she was in the first book. So it's interesting that people, were kind of excited to be included.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of afraid I was going to be run out of town.
Well, when you talk about these stories, I know a few of these stories, and I took the liberty of telling one of your stories last night on a trip we were on. And it happened to be the one about the half a stick. Of stovepipe.
Yeah.
And of course, we've got plenty of time here left. We've got another close to half hour or something like that. And I wouldn't mind at all if you don't sharing one of these stories. And it doesn't matter if one that you think that you might.
Some of these stories are kind of colorful, and I don't know that they're good for the radio.
Well,
I don't know.
You can do like Walter Matthau when he told a joke on the Johnny Carson show. He cleaned it up a little bit, but we all knew what he meant.
Yeah. Well, we'll take that into consideration. But do you want me to tell the story about the stovepipe?
Oh, I think it's hilarious. Yes.
Okay. Well, my dad was quite colorful, and he had a group of friends, and these are other well-known Lawrenceburg people.
This is true.
Like Bud Abbott, Big A, that ran the septic tank. He had the septic tank that cleaned everybody's septic tanks in the county for decades and surrounding counties. And Jim White would come by the office after work, and other friends would stop by the office after work. And once Dad had closed for the day and stopped, his friends stopped by, they might have a drink. But
might.
They might. I'm not going to say they did, but they might. And once he did that, this was in his younger days when he still did wait on some customers occasionally. But a man came in and said he needed, and Mickey had closed the store, but he came on in anyway, and he said, I need a half a stick of stovepipe. It's going to be cold tonight, and we got to get this thing hooked back up. And so Dad begrudgingly said, well, just wait here. And he went on out into the shop, and he caught one of the employees before he left, and he said, hey, some SOB up front wants a half a stick of stovepipe. Could you cut that for him before you leave? And Dad turned around, and the man had followed him out there and was standing right behind him. And he said, and this nice gentleman would like the other half. Now, Dad was quick.
Yeah, he was quick.
And so to follow up on that, I put that story in my first book because Dad had told that for years, and I'd heard it many, many, many times. And I kind of thought maybe he just made that up. But I was at a reading, and a lady came in, and she said that she really enjoyed my books, and that she said her husband was reading it, and he started laughing, and he said, I am the SOB that went in and asked for the half stick of stovepipe. And he said, that happened to me. And so it was all true.
A true story.
Yes, yes.
And there's that and many, many others in Shoes and Cheese.
Yeah, that's in Shoes and Cheese. Now, it's more about the local characters in a small town that you find. And the interesting thing to me is how many people have read my book. Well, I'm fascinated that anybody's read my book. But there were so many people that have read it from out of town or other towns or from California or wherever that would say, I know all these people. They've never been to this town or Boontown or anything, but they the people are universal. Every town has these characters in it. So that was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
And just the idea of when I'll be at my satellite office at Susu's where you always find
see
me.
you. Yeah.
And I sell a lot of books at lunch. If you ever need a book, you can stop by and get one at lunch. But at Susu's, people, have stopped me and told me, I read your book this weekend or whatever, and that they really enjoyed it, made them laugh, it, put them in a good mood or whatever. And that is, that just makes me feel really, really good.
Rewarding.
It is very, very rewarding. And it's, the reason that I've continued to write.
That's awesome. Well, can you share another story from that same book, maybe? If I don't want to put you on the spot, but
there's so many. I can't really. I'm trying to think offhand.
I'll tell you this though. I had the privilege of knowing pretty much all the guys that you've mentioned.
Yeah.
Your dad especially, and then Jim White, Bud Abbott. They were kind enough to let me drink coffee with them in the mornings at the bus station. And I'll tell you a quick story on that. Of course, there was Ben Purnell in there, and way back when Chuck Brewer was in there. A lot of those guys, and
a lot of them are influence characters in my book.
You'll see influences of those in the book.
Yes.
Charlie Holt, come in there some, but anyway, I remember when I would be out and about early. Now they were an age category away from me. I was younger than all of those guys. But I knew they were gathering in that old bus station in the mornings, and I was so curious. I was just crazy curious about it. And, of course, I just stopped in one morning, just out of the blue, poked my head in, and I said, is this a private meeting or can anybody? And they said, well, you come on in. And from that moment on, every chance I got, I would sit with them in the mornings. And I wish I could recreate that. Because it was so much fun to listen to those guys, and of course they wouldn't pull punches with each other at all. They were always ribbing each other one way or the other.
Well, in the book, I talk about how much fun my dad had in his day-to-day life. I don't think that. My nephew Clint, who's dealing with our company right now, talks about how and I mean it is everything is deadlines and it's very, very stressful.
Yes.
And back in the day when my dad was running the company, he just it seemed to enjoy himself and have a lot more fun. And he golfed on Thursday afternoon, and a lot of business deals took place on the golf course or in the clubhouse. And he saw his friends for coffee in the morning, and his friends stopped by after work, and they had and I also mentioned in the book is, you would hear these loud arguments. He and Bud Abbott and some of the others were just going at it about something. And they would literally just pick the opposite side of an argument. Of a topic, so they can argue.
Oh yeah,
they love to argue, and people would hear them and think that they were really mad at one another. And I just I didn't even pay any attention to it. But then a minute later they'd be laughing, and they just and they'd forgotten that, and they'd never stay mad at one another. But they really enjoyed their day-to-day life and their work life, and Dad really enjoyed the clients that he had and the customers that he worked for. And like I said, he'd take them golfing. If there was a problem on the job, that was the way you solved
that problem. Take them golfing.
You'd go to the golf course.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I've seen him on a golf course a few times, and one thing that would aggravate him is if anybody was on their cell phone on the golf course.
Well, he swore, okay, here's another story about my dad. This is one in one of the books, but I had a computer information degree and a marketing degree when I graduated. And of course, we had never had a computer in the building when I graduated from college. And the first thing that I wanted to do was get all of our bookkeeping and accounting on a computer system. And he was all for it. He wasn't against it. But we were setting up computers, and he said, well, I'll tell you one thing, there'll never be a computer in my office. There'll never be one in there. And so one of his friends even had a sign, and it was made up, that said, in quotes, there will never be a computer in this office, and Mickey Evers at the bottom, and he framed it, and so it would sit on his desk. And so one day, now Dad loved to play the stock market, and so one day he came in my office and said, hey, a lot of my friends are trading stocks and following the stock market on their computer. How do you do that? And I said, well, we just have to set up a computer in your office and, get it, we just set it up, Well, okay, so then he decided that it was going to be okay, that he could have a computer in his office. And so, I heard him, so when he got on there, and we set it up where he'd go in and check his stocks every day, because he'd always had a subscription to the Wall Street Journal, and he'd check his stocks that way. But he decided that this would be quicker and easier, and he could put all of his stocks in there, and it would show the values and all that. So he checked it every day and just loved it. And so then another day he came in my office and he said, what's this internet I keep hearing about? He said, all my friends keep talking about the internet, that they're on the internet. And I said, well, Dad, that stock market report that you're checking multiple times a day is coming to you via the internet. You are on the internet.
Yeah.
And he said, I am. He said, oh, I didn't know that. So then I heard him later that day on the phone. He was talking to one of his friends. He said, hey, are you on the internet? He said, I've just been on there checking my stocks. Said, you need to get on there. You need to get on it. And but once he realized he had been on the internet, he was all about it. So,
good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, let's talk a little bit about your second book. Mm-hmm. We've got Shoes and Cheese, and lots of stories in there. And for those that are, I guess, hometown folks, they'll sound familiar. There'll be some familiarity with it, some recognizability. What about the second book? What was the name of it again?
Death and Ham.
That's right.
Yeah.
You got that right.
Yeah, and a lot of people had died in that year. A lot of important people, and it's not a sad book at all. But I got to thinking, every time I went to a funeral, there was a tray full of ham, and I thought, is this required? Do we have to have ham? And then I went to Honey Baked Ham one day to get a ham to take to someone else's funeral, and I realized that I felt like I had entered into Tiffany's because they unwrapped the gold foiled hams with the same care as they did a diamond ring at a jewelry store, and they were about the same price.
Yep, you're right.
And so that inspired a couple of stories about the funeral business there that are in the second book. But yeah, I said it looked like Vanna White showing me the hams that I had to choose from. And displaying them on the counter.
Well, they have to find some way to justify that skyrocketing price for those hams.
Yeah. Well, they are wrapped in gold. so,
and I'll have to say this: they're good.
They're very, very good.
They're very good.
They are very good. But yeah, it's an investment.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I was a little bit shocked because I was used to buying ham at some of the local places in Lawrenceburg, and it's quite reasonable.
Well, that is a memory that I have of your dad. Just a minute. It just came to me.
The country hams.
Well, he did the country hams, but he was also talking about, somebody was talking about getting a honey baked ham, and he raked them over the coals that he could make a ham that was he could cook one. He let them have it.
He was a great cook.
Yeah, he let them have it. He didn't need to buy no honey baked ham. He could do a ham better than that one. So anyway, let's take another phone call. Good morning. How are you?
Yes, he keeps mentioning his son. He's got a son named Clarence. Is that right?
No.
I have a nephew, Clint.
Clint Evers is his nephew.
Oh, I thought you said Clarence. I figured he was named after his great uncle.
Clarence?
That's okay. I'll hang up and listen on the radio.
Okay. Well, Matt, on a review, your dad's brother was...
I had my mother's brother was Clarence. I have
okay.
an uncle, Clarence.
Okay.
Now my nephew is Clint. And he's in. Clint and Ryan are in the construction business with me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Well, have you? Of course, now you've got 3 books.
Right.
And I know they're all great. But I want to ask you, have you got a favorite story in either one of them yet?
Well, the most popular, I do readings, and I've been doing quite a few readings for my books because that's the most fun when my friends have all said, it's fun to read the books, but when you read them yourself and we hear you read them, it's much, much funnier.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I did an audio book, which has, I think 20 of my favorite stories are in the audio book.
Okay.
And it's available on Audible on Amazon, or it's available on CDs at Paper and Thread.
Oh yeah.
So you can get it on CD if you still have a CD player.
I have the Audible app. I use it a lot.
Yeah, well, I have a audio book on Audible, and
that's
so
good to
you
know.
can hear me tell the stories, and it is much better, I think, than reading it yourself because I do a little ad lib here and there.
Yeah.
So the third book. Is inspired. The name was inspired by the story I told you earlier about the letters, but it's a lot of different stories about just things that I'm involved in. Things some of my travel experiences that I think are kind of funny. One of my favorite stories that I didn't realize that it's become a national obsession is my obsession with true crime. I am obsessed with true crime television shows.
Oh, really?
And I wrote a story about, it's called Dateline Obsessed, because I am obsessed with it. And I did not realize until I read my story at one of the readings that everybody seems to be obsessed with these true crime stories. It's really
My
a
wife
national
likes
obsession.
them.
I love it. I watch them all the time. So that's one of my, and I give some advice that I have learned from watching Dateline. A lot of things that I've learned on there. There's some very valuable life lessons that you can learn from,
No way.
from Dateline.
Okay.
So that's a great story, and there's stories about some of my friends who are obsessed with sports, and there's some things about just different. And there's some stories about Lawrenceburg too in there, and there's just a lot of different fun stories in this last one.
The last book is Airmail and
Chocolate Pie.
Chocolate Pie.
Yeah.
All right, and all of these books are available on Amazon.
On Amazon,
Okay.
I have an author page on Amazon, and you can just go on there and I think if you pull up one and you go down, it'll have all of them on there. But you could just put in I think you could just put in my name, or you could put in the name of one book, and it'll bring up.
Well, it's a big deal to get published. And how did that take place? We got a few minutes
Well,
left.
these are self-published, so I don't have a publishing company. It's kind of like my design career. I did it my way.
Yourself.
I did it, yeah. But the thing about it is you are able. You have more control if you self-publish, and you own your own books. So. Okay. I just thought it was easier, and I didn't want to, wait 5 years or whatever to try to get a publishing company to and I feel it was probably very unlikely that I would get a publishing company because it's a very niche book, and so I decided just to do it myself. And with Amazon, it's so easy to publish a book now, and you can market it worldwide, from your
pretty neat.
From your laptop.
But there's an investment involved in doing that.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the biggest is now if you're able to do your own editing, the investment is very minimal. But I would not trust my own editing at all.
Right.
So
interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
You said you did the audio book. And did you take portions of each of the books maybe?
There's several stories from each book in the audio book.
Okay, cool.
And the audio book is partially recorded live with an audience and partially in studio.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I invited a lot of readers to come, and we had a great time, and we recorded one night. I did about 7 stories live, and we did that.
That's kind of a production, more or less. I mean, how was that? How did that get accomplished?
Well, actually, one of the Kellys, the singing group, the Kellys, records people.
Oh, yeah.
And he brought the equipment and set it up in our conference room at my office. And it was really pretty. I had about, 25 or 30 people there in the audience. And he recorded it, and he edited that for me. He edited the audio for me. And then I had a lady in Nashville record my in-studio version or pieces, and then basically once again, Amazon makes it really easy to do these things. You can just you just load each piece of audio into the program, and you have to have an intro and an ending piece, and there's regulations, of course, but it actually isn't that difficult.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And then I also have all 3 of my books are available as ebooks and as in for Kindle, or for you can download them to your iPad or whatever. So I have all types of media available.
Yeah.
But
those of us who are, and my wife is one of them, who's a real traditionalist when it comes to reading. They love to have the book.
Oh, I prefer to have the book too.
They love to have the book, just the pages and the smell that comes with the paper and all that, the ink and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and all the books that I have at Lawrenceburg Glass and at Paper and Thread are signed. And it's interesting to me, people always wanted me to sign my books, and I thought, well, it doesn't.
Well, I mean, hey, it means
anybody. But it actually, but I do. They are all signed by the author, and they make great Christmas gifts.
They do make great Christmas gifts.
And it's that time of year, so I'm just promoting that right now. And but I do do. I did go and read at the Kiwanis Club, which my dad. There's stories about my dad in the K notes and the Kiwanis Club, in the books, and I've read there, and I've read at the library several times. I'm going to be reading at the library on January 16th, I believe, at noon.
Okay.
I'm going to be having a reading then, and I'm trying to do more readings out of town now because that gets me into new listeners, and new readers.
Yeah, are you getting some request, or how?
I just did one in Columbia a couple of weeks ago, and I'm doing one. And then somebody there asked me to do the Columbia Kiwanis Club, and then there was the Columbia Library, and I'm
Good deal.
and I've done some book clubs here, and I've done quite a few different. I've had quite a few readings here.
That's pretty awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Pretty awesome. Well, I happen to know that, of course, your real job is. Well, you don't really have a real job anymore at Evers, do you? Other than just when you want to be there.
They tolerate me, but I'm still an owner, so they can't really.
They can't get rid of you.
They can't get rid of me, but but I try to contribute what I can and when I can. But.
So I remember one of the contributions that you made that I know directly was the remodeling of the Evers construction office building.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been a while back.
Oh, we've remodeled so many times. Gosh, we've remodeled a lot.
But you upgrade that and did a big remodel on that.
We started out with like 3 rooms on the old side of the building, and it was quite dirty and primitive and all that. And we've kind of, and then Dad bought the Elks Lodge building. If you know the building that we're in now, was the Elks Lodge. And we for years, we would have some elks stop by and knock on the door, think they were at the Elks building.
Yeah. Well, you can catch Bobby, of course, at Susu's a lot of times at lunch.
Yeah.
And
if you need a book.
But now tell us where we can get one here locally, really.
Yeah, Paper and Thread. My niece Stephanie, that's her shop, and it's right off the square in Lawrenceburg. She has all my books and my audio.
Yes.
And then Lawrenceburg Glass, which is, we didn't talk about that, but that we started that. My brother and I started that in 1992.
That's right. It's
so
right there next door.
32 years old now. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so they have my books there.
Danny Pat in there.
Danny Pat is the manager. Has been there. He opened the door and he's still there every day. Yeah. And then you can get all of my stuff on Amazon all the time.
Awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good. My guest today has been Mr. Bobby Evers. It's been a long time in the works. We've been talking about you coming for a while. I appreciate you coming in. I wish you a Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
And lots of luck with the books. I think for those of us that have had a little exposure to them, they're great. They're fun. They're great. You will enjoy them. Shoes and Cheese, Death and Ham, and Airmail and Chocolate Pie.
Correct.
Awesome, great, awesome. Check them out online at Amazon, and of course we got locally here. What's the Paper and Thread?
Yeah.
And at Lawrenceburg Glass. And Bobby, good to have you.
Thanks.
All
I
right.
enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for coming in this morning.
It wasn't nearly as painful as I expected.
It wasn't bad. I told you it wouldn't be bad at all. But you did have to bring your own tea.
Yes, I did. And next time I want my own tea. Yes.
All right. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Communications. What went wrong in Afghanistan and why? I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. A House hearing